Hylians! So, what a surprise, we are once again talking about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Last week I made a video talking about 6 different characters from Breath of the Wild that I would like to see playable within Age of Calamity. These were a collection of different characters varying in importance and likeliness to get in. Within the video though, I talked about Master Koga, the leader of the Yiga people. I thought he would be a great addition as a playable character, and I would love to see how he could play into the story. After the video was out, I started thinking more about it. I mentioned within the video, and side note, if you haven't seen the video yet, I recommend going over and checking it out after this one. But I mentioned within that video how within the original Hyrule Warriors, one of my most favourite things was to play as villains. Ganondorf, Ghirahim, Zant, Yuga and Skull Kid, getting to play as characters we have had to fight against in other games was such a fun time. And saying how many villains in the series are some of my favourite characters, it definitely was something I was really excited to see even before the game was out. So seeing as playing as villains was such a big thing for many people, not just myself, I've been wondering how they could work playable villains into Age of Calamity. As Age of Calamity focuses on a singular event, unlike the original Hyrule Warriors, which used many, there are not as many villains that could be picked from. So today I want to talk about my thoughts on how villains could be worked into this game, who we could play and how we could play them. But first, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed lately. Over the last week or two, I have gotten so much support from all of you, it really means a lot. I'm still a very small channel, so all of the subscribers, likes and comments really do mean so much to me. If you're new and this is your first time finding my content, please consider subscribing if you enjoy it. I do a lot of Zelda related videos on this channel. Anyway, with that all out of the way, let's get right into this video. Within Age of Calamity, it's very likely we'll be playing the main story as Link, Zelda and the champions. Maybe a couple other characters could be mixed in, but for the most part I believe it will just be them. So if the story is focusing around the heroes, how do we mix playing as villains into that? Easy. A second story mode. Within Hyrule Warriors we had the main story where we played as Link, Zelda and others. We had a small part where we played as Ganondorf, but was quickly sent back to playing as the hero side. Later though, after finishing the main story, you could unlock Sia's Tale, a short side story where we play as Sia, Volga and Wizro, the 3 new villains of that game. Although a short side mode, having a story that focused on the villains of that game, how they teamed up and why they teamed up, was a very nice little addition. Doing something like this I feel would be the perfect way to incorporate playing as villains in this new game. After finishing the main story of Age of Calamity, a second story mode could unlock. This, like Sia's Tale, would be a side story from the villain's point of view, showing us what they were doing before and leading up to events that we played as the heroes. After all, the heroes won't be the winners of this game. As we all know, the events we will see in this game will lead to the failure and downfall of Hyrule. So playing as the villains and seeing how their victory came about from behind the scenes would be great. The main characters we would play as would be the Yiga. As during the attack of Calamity Ganon, I can see them really being out in full force, attacking villagers, getting in the way of the heroes, and maybe even helping the Blights to get to the Divine Beasts. The Yiga foot soldier would be quick. They could use the Vicious Sickle and Demon Carver for their main attacks, but also mix in attacks with a duplex bow. The Yiga Blade Masters would be slower but would hit harder with their Wind Cleaver, and could also incorporate more wind-like abilities into their moves, like the mini cyclones they use to attack sometimes with. And Master Koga, he would be fairly fast but not as fast as the foot soldier, and would obviously be using those barriers and metal spike balls he uses in his fight in Breath of the Wild. I also think if we get any new villains for this game, like what they did in Hyrule Warriors with the already mentioned Sia, Volga and Wizro, I think they would be most likely Yiga members. Different members with different abilities and fighting styles alongside Master Koga, or perhaps instead of Master Koga. I did mention this in my last video, but while there is a chance he could have been alive back 100 years ago, we still don't know for sure. Maybe a new Yiga member could be the leader of the Yiga from 100 years ago, someone a lot more active in the fight and much more dedicated to Ganon. Think of someone like Ghirahim, who spent the whole game of Skyward Sword popping up and getting in our way, all because he was so dedicated in stopping us and reaching his goal of bringing back his master. And to bring Breath of the Wild's sequel into this, perhaps the Yiga leader knows that there is more to Calamity Ganon, and that Ganondorf is resting somewhere in Hyrule. Maybe part of this side story could have us working against Link and Zelda, but also have us looking for something to help Ganondorf or even Ganondorf himself. I'm not sure if we'll get anything so directly connecting to Breath of the Wild sequel in this game, but I'm really hoping for something, even if it's just a teeny tiny hint towards the game. I think if we're playing as villains, having them know something about Ganondorf and maybe mention it would be a really nice little nod. Maybe the Yiga leader could say something like, "You know the Calamity is just a puppet, right?" to another character in passing. But the Yiga are not the only villainous figures in Hyrule. The Blights, twisted amalgamations of malice and Sheikah technology, are the monsters which ended the lives of the 4 champions. We got to fight each of the Blights within Breath of the Wild, each of them, while visually similar, having their own unique fighting styles. Fire Blight Ganon uses a large Sheikah axe along with a barrier and fire attack. Wind Blight Ganon uses a large Guardian-like laser arm cannon which can shoot multiple attacks. The monster can also create cyclones which can knock back attackers. Water Blight Ganon uses a long Sheikah tech spear and has also got the power to create blocks of ice. And Thunder Blight Ganon uses a sword and shield to attack, along with thunder abilities, and this Blight is definitely the fastest of the 4. It's very likely that within the main story of this game we will once again fight the 4 Blights, but this time as the 4 champions. But unlike in Breath of the Wild, we will most likely not be able to win these fights. Each of the champions will die to the Blights and their spirits will become trapped within the Divine Beasts. In a villain side story though, we would be the Blights and we would be fighting the champions. They would be the boss. It would be our goal to stop and kill the champions, that at this point we probably would have become even closer connected to. We would have had a whole nother story mode just to get to know them more, and in the end we then have to turn around and kill them. Sounds pretty rough. A little thought and somewhat of a mini theory is that the Blights could look a little different within this game. You might ask yourself why I think that, but just take another look at the Blights again. Fire Blight uses a large heavy looking weapon and a barrier which surrounds its body. Wind Blight uses a long range weapon and can control the wind. Water Blight uses a spear or trident, and Thunder Blight uses a sword and shield and can control thunder. Each of the Blights uses weapons or abilities very close to the ones the champions they killed use. So what if in Age of Calamity, the Blights work and look a little different to how they were in Breath of the Wild, and it's from killing them that they gain abilities and weapons which mirror the ones the champions used. It might be a little much and maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think seeing something like this would be really cool. And hey, maybe even then we could see how the Blights got all of that Sheikah technology fused into them. Quickly going back to the Yiga, maybe some of the levels could be leading the Yiga towards the Divine Beasts or another location to give Sheikah technology to the Blights. Speaking of Sheikah tech, what about Calamity Ganon? In the fight with him in Breath of the Wild, we can see he has so much Sheikah technology and weapons fused to him. Did the Yiga give that to him? Did he have it the entire time? And did he have it 100 years ago, the time that Age of Calamity takes place? So with that, I think now is a perfect time to finally talk about him. Now, I've been focusing around the idea of a possible story mode for the villains and how they would work in that as playable characters. For Ganon though, it's a little different. In Breath of the Wild, Ganon has 3 different forms. The smoky Malice form circling Hyrule Castle, the creepy Malice and Sheikah tech spider which falls out of the cocoon, and the giant beast pig form that we fight at the very end of the game. Each of these forms is huge. The Blights are pretty big, but still nowhere near the same size of any of these forms. So that's the problem when it comes to Ganon. He's too big. It could be hard to work him in as a playable character in any of these forms. But one way I think will work is a side mode. In Hyrule Warriors, we had a side mode called Ganon's Fury, an extra mode where you got to play as Ganon. This mode was just pure fan service. Playing as Ganondorf is awesome, but getting to also play as his giant beast Ganon form is just so much fun. It's a mission mode where you have to complete different tasks, like kill all of the bosses and defeat a certain amount of enemies. It's the only place you get to play as Ganon because he doesn't really fit in a normal level as a playable character with normal missions to do. Because of the size of all of Ganon's forms in Breath of the Wild, I think this would be the best way to have him playable. You could have a mode where you play as Beast Ganon and have a mode where you play as the spider-like Calamity Ganon. This would also work as we're not too sure what form Ganon might have took 100 years ago, so having them in a side mode would let us play as them but not conflict with any canon of the story. Though if they did want to put him in a villain story mode, I feel it would be best to have him play only one level, the final one. Out of all of his forms that he takes, I think his spider-like form would be the best one for a level, and a boss fight with Zelda. We know she fights Ganon for 100 years, but maybe this could be some kind of strange dream or in some kind of bizarre realm where Zelda would have to be stuck fighting him. It could end with us beating Zelda and having a what-if scenario of what would happen if Zelda was defeated along with the champions and Link, and we could see a completely destroyed and taken over by malice Hyrule. Or we could have to beat Zelda but would get some kind of cutscene after actually finishing the fight, showing us that the two are just repeating the fight over and over again for 100 years, as she tries to keep him back. But I feel the best way to put Ganon in as a playable character would be in a side mode like Ganon's Fury from Hyrule Warriors, or something very similar to it. Like a mode where you just run around Hyrule Field as him taking down hundreds of enemies and destroying absolutely everything around you. And one final small little idea is to have Ganondorf from Breath of the Wild sequel playable. I highly doubt this will happen, but maybe at some point after the sequel is out, we could get some DLC for him to be added to the game with maybe his own little story mode. I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in wanting him to join the cast, but having him playable before Breath of the Wild sequel is even out, that just feels wrong. I just feel it wouldn't be a good move, saying we don't even know that much about the game to start with. But having him as future DLC for the game, I could see happening. Hyrule Warriors was supported with DLC for quite a while after it came out, adding in new characters, modes, adventure maps, so I wouldn't be shocked if they also did this down the line for Age of Calamity. But those are just some of my ideas on how villains could be made playable in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I really hope we get a chance to play as villains. I'm pretty sure we'll have at least one Yiga member to play as, but seeing the Blights and Ganon playable, even for just one level or mode, would be so great in my eyes. But what do you guys think? Do you want villains playable again in this game? Do you think it could happen? And what do you think of my ways of how they could be implemented into this game? Tell me all of that down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching and getting to the end of this video, it really does mean a lot. I hope you have all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!